Hey, what's up, everybody? How we doing?
Hey.
Good. Let's go. Welcome to Let's Talk About It. My name's Adam Darris. I'm here with Joel Martin.
Good to be
here.
here.
And I feel like it's only right. It's only right to ask the question of you that I asked of the whole room, which is if you could acquire any random skill, what's the skill you want?
Very clearly, I want to do what all these people on the stage are able to do. I have zero musical talent. I am impressed and amazed, would love to even just understand music and how to do it. So
I thought you were going to say the ability to remember your Greek and Hebrew without any work.
the real skill, that's It's a
Half these people have done this in school.
Jason was talking to me. He's like, you do this one chord thing one time. I was like, over my head. So
yeah, for me, I think it would. If singing counts, I don't know if that's a talent or a skill that can even be grown. But singing.
When you say singing, are we talking like Taylor Swift or like Bocelli? The opera guy?
I just want to be able to carry a tune without everybody in my area looking at me, being like, "This is embarrassing."
So the embarrassment is the main driver.
Yeah. Well, no, I'd like to be good at it too, Joel.
Oh.
But yeah, right now, that's part of it. I think a little bit.
Good.
You hit a nerve there. Thank you.
It's all right. We'll go to counseling later.
Yeah. Well, in this series, which was Let's Talk About It, the hope for this series is for you and I to discuss some topics that I think are generally helpful for the church, in our lives, for young adults to hear, but maybe not to preach a sermon on it, but to discuss it in a way that allows us to evaluate and apply it in a meaningful way. And so we talked about discernment last week.
Yep.
And if you missed that, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to the podcast. But tonight we're going to be talking about the topic of how to become a lifelong learner. And really, those are somewhat linked.
Yep.
In the sense of discernment is a part of growing in wisdom, and we want to be lifelong learners that are acquiring wisdom and growing in wisdom. And I think this is a biblical call. I think there is
Absolutely.
a biblical precedent for us to become lifelong learners in lots of areas. That's literally why the book of Proverbs was written. And so I'll just start by reading the first few verses of Proverbs that kind of set up this topic. It says this in Proverbs chapter 1, starting in verse 2. To know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. Catch this. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance.
Love it.
I read that and I just thought, I hope most of us desire that. I hope that is our heart, is that this topic makes you want to be somebody who is learning, growing, leveling up in your Christian life. And it ties back to what we talked about last week, being able to discern good from evil, wisdom from folly.
I think it's God himself that is the ultimate motivator. Like the drive for me to be a learner is that the scriptures say that God has revealed himself and has made himself known. And I only know a fragment of what there is to know about God. And that to me is what drives me into every area of life. I want to know what his word reveals about his character, his personality, but also just like I go and watch and appreciate art, I want to learn how did he do this and how did he make such beautiful things. I want to learn, I enjoy watching videos of how things are made or how cars are put together. How much more do I want to learn how he built the world and how he made cells and so I think it's helpful for me to know this is not an academic pursuit. This is not a self-promotion sort of thing of I want to be a wise, knowledgeable, respected individual. I think that's okay to desire, but ultimately it's so that we can know the Lord more.
Yeah, it's not knowledge intended to puff up. It's knowledge just intended to humble us as we see the ultimate creator and all that he's done for us, which I think is a good distinction. And for me, it's just the desire, I think, to never stay stagnant, to not stay in one spot, but even in my spiritual life and every area of life to be just consistently growing more and more into the image and likeness of Jesus. That transforming call that we see in Romans chapter 12 should be a driving force, I think, for each one of us.
Yep. But it's even odd for this to be true, but in Luke, it says that Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. So if it's true for him, how much more should it be true of me?
And it's interesting. because actually a couple verses before that, it kind of gives that model of him in the temple, and he's sitting among the teachers, he's listening, he's asking questions.
Can you think about that? He made them, gave them breath and life.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'll learn from you.
Yeah. And he sits at their feet and listens. It's just an incredible model. So as we kind of jump into this, there's probably some in this room who don't know me, don't know you. And as we're talking about being a lifelong learner, they might be thinking, why are we even qualified to talk about this at all? And so with some level of humility, when you look at your own life or mine, like, why are we even qualified to have a conversation about how to become lifelong learners? Why are we even up here?
That's a great question.
It's a great
at one
question.
level.
Yeah.
I mean, to try to answer your question, though, formally, I mean, I've pursued a decent amount of education. When I did high school and undergrad at Bucknell, I majored in cell biology, biochemistry, and also classics, so like ancient literature, ancient Greek. Went to Harvard for grad school, studied cell biology and evolutionary biology there. Have taken seminary and seminary classes. That's kind of the formal. I'll say a big part of my life has also been non-book learning.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this later, but part of what I intentionally did was sought when I had times to do like jobs between summers and college and so forth. I sought out jobs so I could learn skills for later in life. So part of that was I worked on a farm because I wanted to learn machinery, wanted to learn agriculture, followed around and worked with my wife's uncle doing HVAC work so I could fix things, shadowed a mechanic to learn how to work on cars. We'll get there. I didn't want to just be an academic. Yeah. I'll be honest. Maybe this is arrogant. I feel like there are a lot of academics who can't do a lick of things in the real world. Did not want to be that person. I wanted to be able to hold a conversation with a PhD, but also talk to the diesel mechanic and have a clue about what's going on, like live in both of those worlds. So still far cry from getting there, but that's the goal.
Yeah, I mean, in a similar vein, I've done fairly extensive high-level learning, and we've done language studies and written large papers and done some of those kinds of things. But on a greater level, at this point, it's like, man, we've done some of those things, but we've had to balance families and workplaces and ministries,
wiping butts.
Yeah. Yep. And so there's learning kind of in all of these different areas, and part of it is learning how to balance being a learner academically, in the real world, in the family, in the workplace, in ministry, and being able to do that without dropping certain areas and just becoming unable to keep up in some areas. So I think we're still in process, very much.
Oh, very much. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but we've learned some things along the way. We just wanted to share a little bit about some of this in our journey, and maybe pull back the curtain a little bit on how we think in terms of, this is our desire, is to always be people that are learning in Christ. And so before we get to the how, which is a huge part of tonight, of how do we become lifelong learners, when we talk about a lifelong learner, and you started to allude to it, what are we really talking about? Because to some sense, there's the academic side, there's the spiritual side. Is it skills? Is it all these other things? Like, as we think about the call to become a lifelong learner, how narrow is that? How broad is that call?
Oh, yeah. It's a wonderful question.
What do you think, Joel?
I mean, I think it's a very broad, thank you.
Yeah.
Very broad. I mean, I, by nature, am an academic. I love academic learning, and we'll get into that. Like, I love reading. I love reading science papers. I love reading journals.
You're a nerd, is what you're saying.
I do this.
Yeah,
enough.
push them up.
All right. But at the same time, I feel like there are so many other categories. We didn't even talk about this, but there's relational wisdom.
It's a huge one.
I mean, so much of what I think young adults, as you all are learning, is how to move relationally in the world, how to be self-controlled with your speech, how to read other people. The Proverbs talk about people are deep waters, and a man of wisdom or a man of understanding will learn to draw them out. A great question to ask yourself is, do you have skills to actually draw people out, to get them to reveal the hard things, the challenging things? This is honestly the skill what counselors and others master, but we all should if we are to be wise as in people. There's practical skills like we were alluding to. I think it's very broad. And another category I'll just throw out there is, I'm learning my wife and my children, and like being a student of other people and learning their patterns and their ways. So I don't think we want to narrow this down to a scope of
No.
it's just books or just, words on a page. It's the whole of life that can come through. I mean, I'll say one other one. Like the Proverbs talk about this. They talk about, what little thief, he says, observe the ant, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like an armed man. That's in chapter 6. I think later in chapter 22, it says it exactly the same again, but right before it, it says, I passed by a wall that was broken down, and I observed and thought to myself and taught myself wisdom. And then he says the proverb over. So what he's showing is the progression of wisdom is you first just learn it from someone, but the second is that you actually start to observe the world around you and ask questions. Why is this way? Or how did this happen? Or what can I learn? And you teach yourself. Like God is teaching in all of creation and everything that's happening. So that's a long-winded answer to say it's a long, broad thing.
Yeah, and so our hope tonight is we're not trying to be so narrow. We're trying to be really broad and understand pretty much everything falls into the category of the possibility to continue to grow in some sense.
Yep.
And to your point about learning our wives and learning our kids, there's so many things, so many moments in life that this is the first time we've done. It's the first time I've been married 13 years. It's the first time I've had 3 kids under 6. It's the first time that I've dealt with this situation in my home. And so there's always these moments of I'm trying to learn and prepare.
Like me with all teenage girls.
Yeah, you're in a home just estrogen
Surrounded
everywhere.
by females,
Yes.
including my animals.
Yes.
1 male, me, 18 females.
18 females.
Yeah.
That's got to be some kind of a record, I got to say.
I'm learning a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
But part of it is learning and growing so that you can be prepared for when those moments do come in life with family, with work, with ministry, whatever.
They're all now wondering what animals.
Yeah, we've lost
We've
the room.
lost
It's
it,
all right.
but we're
It only took us 10 minutes. This is great.
Chickens. There we go.
Is that all you got? Chickens?
What's that?
Chickens? Anything else?
1 dog.
Okay. That's great.
And then humans.
Thanks for clarifying.
Good.
And one other thing on the topic, I'm just jumping right back in. One of the
Please.
other things on learning, right, is so much of this, to Joel's point, is relational. And so, not to say the elephant in the room, but there are many of you in this room who that's a huge area of growth for you, right? Relationally, you need to learn how to talk to people. You need to be able to talk to people of the other sex. You need to be able to initiate conversations. You need to be able to influence people. And so as there's relational, there's the self-starter side, there's the spiritual discipline side. And so we're talking about spiritual formation to some extent tonight. But generally, the call is for each one of us to be constantly formed in all sorts of really, really important areas.
Yep.
And some of us really need that more than others. So let me read. Let's talk a little bit about the how, because I think that's where the meat comes into this conversation about how do we become lifelong learners. Let me read a verse out of Proverbs 4 just to kick us off.
Love it.
You know where I'm going. It says this: the beginning of wisdom is this. Like, how do we get wisdom? The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. I love that. Like, make it nice and simple for us. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. Whatever you get insight. Prize her highly, and she will exalt you.
Amen.
She will honor you if you embrace her. She will place on your head a graceful garland. She will bestow on you a beautiful crown.
So, Adam, how have you done that?
Thank you for asking, Joel. I'll even say before, as we get into the practical side, which is really, really detail oriented, part of this is even just thematically preparing yourself to become a lifelong learner. And so there are just some themes that even come to my mind of I'll just use one example. It's like optimizing your brain to be able to learn in the context that you may already have to learn, right? And so part of that might be just taking care of yourself so that you're in a position where you can learn. You're like, man, I'm having trouble retaining
Got brain
information.
fog all the time?
Yeah, I got brain fog. Well, why is that? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating well? Are you getting exercise in the areas you need to get exercise? Are you on your phone in a way that's consistently keeping you from being able to think clearly? And so sometimes you need to get into situations where wisdom abounds, but some of you are in those situations, but you're not actually allowing that learning environment to change you and grow you because you're not optimizing the learning environment. So one example would be, I would guess many of you come to church on Sunday mornings, but some of you choose to go to bed at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. on Saturday nights. Right?
Yep.
So then you're in the environment on a Sunday morning, and you might have an engaging preacher, you might have a text that's really interesting, but you're falling asleep or you're distracted, or you skipped breakfast in the morning and so now you're not feeling well, and so you might step out of the service and you haven't set yourself up to learn. And so some of those things I've just been thinking about even before you get into the weeds is just how do we think about learning and prepare ourselves to learn in some of those environments?
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think we so often neglect that it's a whole life thing. And every little decision we make, like you said, from our bedtime to what we're eating, factors into that. And as an aside, just personally, that's something as I hit my 30s, I started to realize more that we actually should learn the wisdom of appropriately, for lack of a better verb, manipulating our bodies so that our minds are most attuned. I mean, this is as ancient as practices of fasting, right? When you fast, your body switches over to burning ketones, which people routinely talk about giving you mental clarity. And so people would exercise that kind of thing, discipline, in order to have clearer thinking. We can do that. Caffeine is handed out at churches liberally. There's so many things that we can do. We won't get into all that. That's a whole other thing. But just becoming aware and learning your own body so that with the goal of being maximally productive for the kingdom. Because you want to be relationally on at church. You want to be at your job, imaging the Lord by faithfully producing what God has called you to produce. Yeah.
And so some of that, even just practically, is knowing when I learn best and where I learn best. And so I've been figuring out in my own life, man, I learn best in the morning.
Oh,
my brain is ready to go. I'm sitting there. I'm able to get a lot done in that first block. But if that first block is meetings all morning and then I'm trying to do my heaviest learning in the late afternoon or in the evening, I just struggle to retain, right? And so it's not that I'm not willing to put the energy in. I am, but I've had to kind of learn my schedule and my calendar and actually realign and this gets into the rhythms of life a little bit, but when are you most profitable? When are you most have the most clarity? And that's been immensely helpful to me in my own life to be able to start to say, hey, these are the moments when I don't have to try as hard to retain this information. It's right there. My energy is high. My focus is clear. There's fewer distractions. This is going to be my time set aside for learning.
So you're becoming a student of your own life to learn, when do I learn well? When do I relate well? I don't know if you noticed this, people tend to do relational things more in the evening. They tend to do more focused things in the morning. So just learning that rhythm, living according to it. I love it.
Yeah, because some people, they'll be reading and they're just falling asleep while they're reading. And they're like, I can't read. I just always fall asleep. And I'm like, my guess is there's some point in your day where you wouldn't fall asleep reading, right?
I don't at 7 a.m. I do at 3 p.m.
Yeah. And so it's thinking along those lines. We've talked about this a little bit in terms of becoming a lifelong learner in my own life. It's who I surround myself with. That's a huge part of this. Putting people around me. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I'm usually not, but I don't want to be the smartest person in the room.
That's why I'm married up.
Yeah, I want to be around other people that are challenging me, that are pursuing wisdom, that are thinking critically. It's one of the values of when I went to seminary, man. You're sitting around with all these other people who are they've really thought about the kingdom of God. They've thought about the word of God. They're pursuing him with a real passion that challenges me and forces me to kind of, man, I want to have wisdom like they do. And so I'm not surrounded by a bunch of fools pulling me down. You always have some fools in your life that you can't always get rid of, but those aren't my primary people that I'm spending my time with.
Talking about me?
Listen, no.
Good.
But the reality is, like, in everyday life, man, you're going to have friends, you're going to have coworkers, you might have some family members, some people like that, but who are you spending the time with functionally?
Well, I've even gotten to the point where I'm conscious with that. I have a list of names of people that are not
wise and foolish.
No.
Okay.
Just wise.
Yeah. Okay.
That are peripheral to my sphere relationally, but I'm not yet in, and that I want to learn from. And so I've made a list of names and I'm working to try to get around them, spend some time with them to learn from them. Peter Greer, if you're listening from Hope International, I would love to meet with you. That's a guy where I'm like, okay, I see his love for the Lord. I see the fruitfulness of what he's doing. And I'm like, I want to learn from that guy and I want to gain his wisdom. But he's not the only one. And there's others that I've been able to meet with and work towards. But it can be both an informal and a very conscious thing to pursue.
Yeah, and so for me this year, I was like, hey, I want to read through my Bible in a year, but doing it on my own can feel difficult and challenging at times. And so how do I find other people that are wise that might desire this same goal? So 3 of my closest friends, they love the Lord. We all said, hey, let's go through a reading plan together.
Love it.
And so it's not just that I'm reading my Bible. I now have external accountability built in with my friends. And then even when you just read it, it's like, oh, who should I be texting about this? Well, now I've got 3 people. We've got a group chat that's blowing up. We're able to ask, what are you learning? What are you reading today? Are you guys caught up? And there's this built-in accountability, but it's because wise people are helping me to accomplish the goals I've set out for. It's so much easier to go to the gym with a friend.
Yes.
Right? Someone's going to be like, I guess I can't skip today because we are meeting at this time at this place. And I think you need people in your pursuit of wisdom who are similarly pursuing wisdom, and they're running side by side with you, and we're going here. And marriage, I mean, that was one of the reasons that I married my
Be
wife.
wise about who you pick.
Yeah. And I was like, I found a beautiful, godly woman who's running the same direction as I am, has the same goal, has the same heart. It was so much easier for us to link up in that pursuit of Jesus. But she has that wisdom that I wanted in some areas.
I still remember in college, one of my football teammates was talking and he was like, man, I want to come home to a girl who's like talking my ear off about, economics. And I thought, you're an idiot, man. Like, if you got that girl, find her and stick with her. Like, yes, be around wise people.
So one of the things I think in just this pursuit of like, how do we become lifelong learners is just the value of discipline, the value of being able to cultivate a diligence in your life to actually learn, because it requires work, it requires energy, and I think that's something that has to be cultivated. And so that's the reality. We got to make that practical a little bit. Can I invite you to share maybe a little bit of your morning script that you do to help? I mean, your discipline, I think, shows up in this morning script, in your pursuit of wisdom and saying, I want to grow, I want to learn. How do I set up my day to pull that off?
Yeah, it's constantly evolving as I try to improve it. But about 6 months ago, I realized that I was not reading to the degree that I wanted to be reading, and was listening to someone talk about the value of early mornings. Jesus would go away while it was still dark and to pray. And so I started getting up at 5 a.m. because I find that it's quiet and it's, there's nobody vying for my time. My rhythm is to do the dishes first, unload the dishwasher. While I'm doing that, I'm praying for my family and spending some time with the Lord doing that. And then I sit down, and for about an hour, I devote it to reading. So the first thing I do is a goal that I have is to be able to read the scriptures in the original without aid. So in other words, I can just look at the text like I do an English text and just read. The reason is because I want to know God's word. I made a goal. Jonathan Edwards, in one of his resolutions, said, I want to so plainly be growing in my knowledge of scriptures that it's always evident to me that I'm making progress. So that's my goal. I want to keep pushing. So I read a chapter of the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Old Testament, every morning. I'm working on my Greek currently. A chapter of the New Testament in Greek. And then I have a stack of theology books that I'm working my way through. So for the remaining time, I just work through that. Then I work out. So I go down, I'm old, so I start stretching and doing mobility work. And while I'm doing that, there's a set of podcasts where these professors are going through Greek and Hebrew, a verse a day, and parsing it and help you. So I watch that and do all that. And then while I'm continuing to do my weightlifting, I start to put on a podcast because I love auditory learning. And that's a range of like Huberman style stuff of science through theology. Currently, I'm listening to the book Knowing God by J.I. Packer. Phenomenal book. By the way, little shout out. If you don't know about Hoopla or Libby on your library, you can get a bunch of these wonderful Christian resources and other learning for free. The other thing then is I go on a 2.5-mile walk. And that's a time to pray, just observe the Lord in nature for the first part of it. But then I've also been trying to grow in my knowledge of Western literature, because I realize we're in a world, all of this is part of, thought, and I want to be able to understand it. So I've been going through significant pieces of Western literature, from things as early as like the Odyssey and the Iliad to as late as like Tale of Two Cities, Dickens, other things, because I want to be able to understand the world that God has made and then speak God's truth into that. So that's a bit of like, and that'll run about till
When does that end?
about 8:30, 9 o'clock. And then, so the first 4 hours are basically scripted in learning and exercise. I do eat and shower in there. So,
And then your workday starts,
correct.
right? And I think I'll just ask the question everyone's thinking, which is, okay, is that realistic? How would I even get to that level and that process? Because the reality is, my guess is, it may have looked different for you in seasons where your kids were younger and required more energy and effort when they're in their elementary years. So can you speak to that a little bit of just the evolving seasons of growth?
Some of this is true that depending on your season of life, like if you're, a truck driver and you have to be up at 5 for milk delivery, I mean, that's not going to work.
Yep.
I totally get that. I would say probably the biggest thing that has helped me, and I think this is probably the excuse that most of us use. I was amazed when I've used apps to turn off all social media, all internet, all things on my phone. It's amazing what boredom will do. And what I mean by that is, if I don't do that, I just so easily get distracted into news or social media. And so that has probably been the biggest help in my morning, is that literally my phone is bricked until about 8 o'clock or 8 a.m., 9 o'clock. All that being said, yes, I mean, when I had a 2-year-old, or you're waking up in the middle of the night to help with feedings and diaper changes, you're not getting up at 5. You're thinking, I'll sleep until 7 if I can. That's amazing. So seasons of life do change. I think for you all as young adults, man, you don't realize how much free time you have. And I would say capture it while you are free. Everyone's going to be like, is that really true? I don't feel free. I didn't feel free when I was a college student either. But looking back, holy cow. You don't know what's coming. That's all I'm going to say. You don't know what's coming.
You just keep stacking responsibilities the weight of
caring
life,
for
children,
people.
All these different things. I just think practically, I think back to when we had one child. It was like, oh my word, we got this newborn. It's so much work and all this stuff. And then it's like, now I got 3, and I'm like, man, we could have hiked a mountain with that one child.
But just to be fair, just like weightlifting, it gets easier the more you practice intentionality with the discipline. So I didn't start where I am, and I'm still working on it. There's still things that I realize are falling short. So it can be as simple as, hey, when you're brushing your teeth, pray. Like, we'll talk about habit stacking, but that has been so helpful for me to just link things that I'm already doing and then add in, like, okay, that's an easy way. That's why I also do prayer while unloading the dishes. Rather than just being mindless while I'm there, how can I use this to learn and to talk with the Lord and grow with Him? Yeah. So what does it look like? Yeah, or how would you?
I mean, in a couple of weeks, we're going to talk more about rhythms of life. And so how do we kind of set up daily habits and weekly habits and some of those things? Because I think that is really, really helpful in this conversation. But there's a clear intentionality that you've decided upon in your own life of, here's the time I've been given, and here's how I choose to spend it. And it takes time to build that resilience up to be able to get to that level.
And some of that comes from that the beginning of wisdom is get wisdom.
Yeah.
It's the desire to want to go after it. So part of what even got me on that path was I was sitting in a senior leadership meeting for Disciple Makers, the ministry I work for. And the president of our organization was mentioning something, and he had mentioned a whole set of books that were foundational to the way DM had thought about this one thing. And I realized it was just like a little flicker in the back of my mind. I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. This is a whole area I don't understand. And the meeting continued on, and I thought about it the next day, and I just wrote him an email and said, hey, you mentioned something. I realized I didn't know that. Could you lay out for me a path for how I could gain that knowledge? And he literally wrote out this like training plan for the next year of like things that I could do to grow in leadership skills and in other. And that was so helpful. But that never would have come if I hadn't had the desire and the commitment, which comes from the scriptures of this is what the wise will do, is hear and increase in learning. That, in other words, there's a proactivity that we need to take to it. Like, it's not just going to happen. We've got to go get it.
Yeah. And the reality is we're wired differently. So, I mean, I'm sitting up here and I'm listening to you. And I think when we had this conversation a few weeks ago, I was like, man, I'm jealous. I'm jealous of your ability to have that kind of time in the morning when I've got a newborn and I've got chaos in my house and all this stuff. And even for me, I'm more of a night owl. So my tendency is to be up later. I've tried the 5 a.m. thing. I can't seem to.
I'm fading.
Yeah, you're fading. And I'm like, I'm ramping up right now, right? And it is kind of interesting how I've tried the 5 a.m. thing and I haven't been able to make it work consistently. And so I'm kind of helping us see there are different ways to do it, but there just have to be non-negotiables in some areas of our life where we say, hey, we all have 24 hours a day. We all have 168 hours a week. So how do we choose to use those? And understand there's a trade-off in all of these different decisions that we make. And so for me, being a night owl, there's certain things that sometimes I do my better work at night.
Yep.
But, I used to have a high school pastor that used to say, no Bible, no breakfast, right? And there's a legalism in that, right? That's not good. But what it did show me is there's priorities that we get to think about in our lives. And so for me, I've had to set my own non-negotiables of, hey, if I haven't gotten to my Bible reading by the evening, hey, I can't put on the game. I can't turn on those YouTube videos. I can't do X, Y, and Z. There's just things that have to happen first in my day.
Deferred gratification.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it isn't always, realistically, I can't always make Bible the first thing I do. But it has to be something that happens before my head hits the pillow. And that's okay. To understand there's flexibility within the script to kind of go off script at times and change those things.
Well, I think the overall thing is to look for, are we even self-conscious about our lives to say, do we have a list of priorities? There are so many varied ways that you can do this. I know some who are auditory learners, so love podcasts. Other people can't do that at all. Some people learn best in relationships. That's fine. Then just set aside time to be around people and learn. Some people learn best in environments like this, coming and hearing teaching. Other people, it's a book. It doesn't matter. It's how do you just get wisdom? That's why I think he says the beginning of wisdom is to go get it.
And so I think some of the practical how comes down to the understanding the obstacles and challenges as well. So for me, one of the things is time management, right? Think how much wasted time is happening in my life, in your life, in this room cumulatively. I mean, my word, right? Just think about your day. Think about your week. Think about the way you spent your time. I remember in college, I did one of those tracked 15 minutes. I had to write down everything I did every 15 minutes for 2 weeks. And I look back on it and I was like, this is embarrassing. So much time was spent on things that really were not meaningful in any way, shape, or form. And so part of pursuing wisdom and growing and learning is recognizing we do have margin at times, but we just waste that time.
I find I both rest poorly and work poorly. So, and I don't know about you guys, I tend to try to do everything all at once. So it's like I'm like trying to take a break from my work, but I'm like checking my email and, and like somewhat watching a TV. I have found it so much more helpful to be like, nope, now is a time to rest. Whatever that means. Just literally stare at the sky, watch a great TV show. But then other times it's like, nope, now's the time to. So I'm with you. We need to
kind of the work hard, play hard idea. Yeah. And I think, man, putting your phone down, getting some of those apps. I have Brick on my phone, so I'm able to be. My phone is bricked and can't do a lot of things for many, many parts of the day. And it really helps with my efficiency, really helps with my ability to learn. And so we are creatures of distraction. That's the reality, is there are inputs coming constantly. So I'm trying to limit those inputs and limit those distractions so that I can be focused on the things that are most meaningful.
And this is not a modern problem. You go back and look at the monks and others. I mean, this is in the history of the church. We've been distracted, and part of it is learning how to focus our mind and attention on the Lord. I mean, look at the disciples on the night that Jesus is dying. What are they doing?
Falling
asleep, getting distracted. And he's like,
you couldn't stay up 1 hour.
Right. Like focus. And that's been the perennial struggle.
Yeah.
So
when you think about cultivating this habit of learning, where has it felt valuable and beneficial? How has it helped? I think for me, just setting and achieving some of these goals are just, it's such a great feeling to not know something, set a goal to learn it, and then actually be able to follow through on that. And I just find that incredibly meaningful. And I found that learning in many ways, like you have this tool belt on, right? And there's all of these areas that I'm trying to grow in so that I can add tools to my tool belt so that I can actually use them in real life, in real situations, in real moments. And sometimes I enter a situation, I realize I don't have a tool in my tool belt to handle this in my home, in my workplace, in my spiritual walk. And it drives me to want to learn more and increase my spiritual formation. And I say, man, this is a hole in my tool belt. I'm going to spend time learning about it. And then there's other ways that it's incredibly rewarding and gratifying when you've poured time and energy into growing a skill or learning something, and then God gives you the opportunity to utilize that skill in a helpful way. And it's just an incredibly rewarding process.
Yeah, I would say for me, there's both an internal and an external reward. There's an intrinsic joy in learning. Like, that's why we have all these like documentaries, and it's like we as humans are built by God to learn, and he rewards us with joy. It's a literal dopamine hit when we learn something new. But probably that's part of my drive is I'm a Christian hedonist, as John Piper would say. I want to just be happy. And so if God says, taste and see that I'm good and learning about him is good, well, then I'm all in. The other side is I think there's great external blessing to this. I have so seen that as I pursue wisdom, I can become a well of joy and blessing for other people, because this is who God is, right? He's the fount of wisdom. We come to him when we are struggling, questioning, weary, and God, with his wisdom, speaks in and heals and renews. And whether that's like counseling a person, I've counseled numerous people through depression and through marriages that are broken and hard, to, hey, this is what it looks like to grow through pornography. There's such a joy in seeing God use the wisdom. And I think there's an imaging aspect to it as well, that if we are meant to be image bearers of God and Jesus is wisdom, then part of my call to be an image bearer is that I image the wisdom of God. Hey, if I give an image, Job 29 talks about what happened when Job would walk into the gates of the city where he lived. He says this, he says, "Men listened to me and waited and kept silence for my counsel. After I spoke, they did not speak again, and my words dropped upon them. They waited for me as for the rain. They opened their mouths as for the spring rain. I smiled on them when they had no confidence, and the light of my face they did not cast down. I chose their way and sat as their chief. I lived like a king among them." And not that we want to be self-promoting, but there's a sense where it's a noble thing to desire to be an elder or a leader. And the main tool for that is wisdom. If we don't become wise, we don't get to be the one whom people wait for and listen and sit as kings among. So, yeah, I'm just throwing that out there. There's a great reward in seeing that happen.
All right, so as we wrap up, let's get super practical. Where do we start? Where might we encourage someone in this room who wants to become a lifelong learner to take a step that's practical and helpful? I'll start.
Please.
I think it's imperative that we become readers. People that read, all right? This isn't that complicated, but it is difficult, right? Mm-hmm. To actually become someone who is a reader. And so I'm gonna give you just a couple quick tips on how to become a reader that I have found incredibly helpful. All right. So if you're somebody who's like, hey, I'm hoping to read, I know you read a lot. I read over 40 books last year. How do we become a reader? Here's where you want to start. First, only read books you want to read.
Oh, yeah.
Books that you're excited about reading. Don't read the book that your great aunt bought for you for Christmas that you couldn't care less about, all right? The one that sits on your bookshelf and you're like, I guess I should.
If you get partway through it and it's bad,
just stop reading, right? Books you want to read. The same way there are TV shows that you want to watch and you can't wait to watch, there are great books. If you don't like reading and you think it's boring, it's because you haven't found the right book. Second thing to start to become a reader, pick books under 200 pages. Short books, books that you can begin, that you're excited about.
So not the Count of Monte Cristo?
Yeah. Don't start with Bonhoeffer biography. Like, start with something small and work your way. Less than 200 pages. You can crank through it. And then even if you somehow don't like it, you can stop it or you can finish it quickly. It helps you to build momentum, right? You can stack books that you finished. Third thing is log your books that you read in an app like Goodreads.
Yeah.
You can see the books you've read. You can finish it. You can say, man, I've read now a couple books. This is exciting. And even on an app like that, anytime you see a book that you might want to read, you can actually put it on that app. So you can see a list of books you would be excited to read, and you can use an app like Libby to check it out. And then last thing that has to be paired with that is use your phone less. Make a commitment to be off of your phone so that you can spend that time reading. So instead of reaching for your phone, you're reaching for your book, okay? So read only books that you want to read. Pick books that are less than 200 pages. Track those books, build some momentum as you finish them, and pair that with stepping away from technology intentionally in your life. And I think that can really, really help you to start to become a reader, which is a big step in learning.
Yep. My only thought would be redeem unused time.
Yeah.
You don't realize how much is out there, whether it's a commute or when you're brushing your teeth. Just look throughout your day and try to redeem that bit of time to do something in the space of learning.
Yeah. Amen. And we're going to talk practically about rhythms of life in a couple weeks where we can get into the weeds on how some of this might look day in and week in and month in and year in. Any final takeaways from you that you want to mention?
The beginning of wisdom is get wisdom. It starts with the decision that you will pursue becoming the wisest person there is.
Yeah. And wisdom will allow you to broaden your impact for the kingdom.
That's what Solomon chose, and look what had happened.
Yeah, and the Lord favored him because of that choice.
Yep.
So broaden your impact, seek wisdom, and watch what the Lord can do, not just in you, but in this generation. I'm going to invite the band up. We're going to give God the last word as we want to. Let me just read about this call out of Proverbs. Proverbs 18:15 says this: "An intelligent heart acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge." And then Proverbs chapter 3 says this, starting in verse 13: "Blessed is the one who finds wisdom, and the one who gets understanding. For the gain from wisdom is better than gain from silver, and her profit better than gold. She is more precious than jewels, and nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand. In her left hand are riches and honor." Will you pray with me? Father, help us to be men and women that seek wisdom, that commit ourselves to learning, not for our sake, but that so we can broaden our impact, so that we can serve you more, and so that through our learning, as we learn more about who you are and who you've revealed yourself to be in this world, that we might more and more image you day in and day out. And we pray this in Jesus' holy name. Amen.